In the early 1200s, a force unlike any the world had ever seen erupted from the harsh, windswept plains of Mongolia. It was an army of horsemen, a storm of arrows and steel that would sweep across continents, toppling ancient empires and redrawing the map of the known world. At the heart of this storm was one man. His name was Genghis Khan. Within a few short decades, his warriors would control more land than the Roman Empire at its peak. His empire would stretch from the shores of the Pacific Ocean all the way to the edges of Europe, creating the largest contiguous land empire in human history. But this story, a story of immense power and conquest, does not begin with a crown or a throne. It begins with survival. Around the year 1162, on the vast, unforgiving grasslands of Mongolia, a boy named Temujin was born. The Mongol people were nomads, their lives entwined with the rhythm of the seasons, the health of their herds, and the speed of their horses. Life on the steppe was a constant struggle. The land was beautiful but brutal, and the tribes, scattered across this endless landscape, were in a perpetual state of conflict, fighting for scarce resources, for pasture, for dominance. Temujin's father, Yasuge, was a Khan, a leader of his clan. But in the treacherous world of tribal politics, leadership was a fragile thing. When Temujin was just a boy, his father was ambushed and poisoned by a rival tribe, the Tatars. The world shattered. In an act of profound betrayal, his own clan abandoned Temujin, his mother, and his siblings, leaving them to fend for themselves in the wilderness. They were outcasts, condemned to a fate that for most meant certain death. For years the family endured extreme poverty. They survived by hunting marmots and gathering wild roots. They faced starvation, capture, and the constant threat of attack. These brutal years of hardship, however, did not break Temujin. They forged him. He learned that loyalty was not a matter of bloodline but a bond earned through action. He learned that strength was not found in titles, but in will. And he learned, above all, how to survive. As he grew into a young man, Temujin's charisma and sheer determination began to attract followers. He wasn't a prince, reclaiming his birthright. He was a leader who inspired devotion. He gathered warriors who, like him, had been marginalized or had grown weary of the endless self-destructive tribal warfare. He made allies through strategic marriages and promises of a different future. One of his earliest and most loyal allies was a young man named Jamuka, his Anda or blood brother. For a time, they fought side by side, their combined strength making them a formidable power on the steppe. Slowly, methodically, Temujin brought the fractious Mongol tribes under his control. He did not just defeat his rivals. He absorbed their people into his own, promoting men based on merit and loyalty, not their aristocratic lineage. This was revolutionary. He created a society where a common shepherd could rise to become a general if he proved his worth. This new system shattered old loyalties and built a powerful, unified force bound directly to him. His famous quote echoed this belief: "I am the punishment of God. If you had not committed great sins, God would not have sent a punishment like me upon you." By the year 1206, his work was complete. At a great gathering of the tribes, a Kurultai on the banks of the Anan River, the unified clans bestowed upon him a new title. He was no longer just Temujin, he was now Genghis Khan, the universal ruler of all the people of the felt-walled tents. A new nation had been born, and it was ready to be unleashed upon the world. What followed was one of the most remarkable and rapid military expansions in history. The Mongol army was a revolutionary force. Every man was a superb horseman, having practically grown up in the saddle. They wielded powerful composite bows, capable of firing armor-piercing arrows with deadly accuracy from a galloping horse. This combination of mobility and firepower was something their settled, agrarian enemies had never faced. Their tactics were a symphony of speed, discipline, and psychological terror. A Mongol warrior often traveled with a string of 3 or 4 horses, allowing him to switch mounts and cover astounding distances without rest. An entire army could appear as if from nowhere, covering 100 miles in a single day. They were masters of the feigned retreat, a devastating maneuver where a part of their army would pretend to flee in disarray, luring overconfident enemies into a chase. Once the enemy line was stretched thin and disorganized, the fleeing Mongols would turn, and a hidden reserve force would emerge from the flanks, encircling and annihilating the pursuers. The great walled cities of Central Asia and China, which had stood for centuries, now faced a new kind of siege warfare. The Mongols were brutally pragmatic. If a city resisted, its fate was sealed. But if it surrendered without a fight, it was often spared, its inhabitants incorporated into the ever-expanding empire. This reputation preceded them, and the mere rumor of the Mongol horde's approach was often enough to cause entire regions to submit. First, they turned their attention to the great powers on their borders. The Tangut kingdom of Shisha fell, then the mighty Jin dynasty of northern China, a war that would last for decades. Genghis Khan himself led his armies west, into the heart of Central Asia, smashing the powerful Khwarezmian Empire. Cities like Samarkand and Bukhara, jewels of the Islamic world, were laid to waste. The destruction was immense, a calculated campaign of terror designed to break the will to resist. By the time of Genghis Khan's death in 1227, the Mongol Empire was already a colossal entity. But the conquest was far from over. He had laid the foundation, and his sons and grandsons would build upon it with terrifying efficiency. Under his successor, Genghis Khan, the Mongol armies pushed further into China, conquering the rest of the Jin. They rode west, into the plains of Russia, sacking Kiev and charging into the heart of Europe. Mongol armies defeated Polish and Hungarian knights, reaching the shores of the Adriatic Sea before turning back only upon receiving news of Ogedei's death. In the east, his grandson Kublai Khan would finally complete the conquest of China, establishing the Yuan dynasty and moving his capital to what is now Beijing. At its zenith in the late 13th century, the Mongol Empire controlled a domain stretching from Korea to Hungary, from Siberia to the borders of India. It was a single political and economic zone that connected civilizations as never before. This period of Mongol dominance, often called the Pax Mongolica or Mongol Peace, had a profound and unexpected consequence. While born of brutal conquest, the empire created an unprecedented era of stability across the vast Eurasian landmass. The Mongols secured the ancient trade routes of the Silk Road, which had become perilous and fragmented. They established a system of relay stations, known as the Yam, which provided fresh horses and provisions for merchants, messengers, and diplomats. For the first time in centuries, trade and travel between East and West became safe and reliable. Chinese silk, gunpowder, and printing technology moved west. Persian astronomy, ceramics, and medicine moved east. Ideas, cultures, and religions flowed freely across the continent. It was during this time that the Venetian merchant Marco Polo made his famous journey to the court of Kublai Khan, spending nearly 2 decades in China and returning to Europe with stories that would fire the imagination of a generation and help inspire the age of exploration. Yet, no empire, especially one so vast, can last forever. The Mongol Empire was too large and too culturally diverse to be governed indefinitely as a single entity. After the death of Mongol Khan in 1259, the empire fractured into 4 successor states, or Khanates: the Yuan dynasty in China, the Ilkhanate in Persia, the Chagatai Khanate in Central Asia, and the Golden Horde in Russia. Though still immensely powerful, these states gradually drifted apart, adopting the local cultures and religions of the people they ruled. The once unified Mongol world began to fade, but the legacy of Genghis Khan and his empire endures. They were not just conquerors, they were agents of historical change on a scale rarely seen. They reshaped the political geography of Asia and Europe, connected distant civilizations, and accelerated the transfer of goods, ideas, and technologies across the globe. The world we live in today was, in many ways, shaped by the echoes of Mongol hoofbeats. From a boy abandoned on the steppe, fighting for scraps to survive, to the ruler of the largest empire the world had ever seen. The story of Genghis Khan is a testament to the power of human will. It is a story of brutal conquest, but also of connection, a story of how a single individual from the remote grasslands of Mongolia forever changed the course of history. Thank you for watching. If you found this journey into the past insightful, please consider liking this video and subscribing to our channel for more stories that shaped our world.